Apartment 3D was supposed to be empty, but someone in green keeps smiling. Reddit horror story. They say walls can't talk, but I've lived long enough in this building to know that's not true. They whisper, murmur, echo things you're not supposed to hear. Arguments through vents, muffled cries behind closed doors, late night thuds that no one reports. Apartment 3D was always a quiet one, tucked away at the end of the third-floor corridor, past the elevator that never worked and the flickering light that no one ever replaced. No pets, no parties, no visitors, at least none that we could see, and maybe that's what made it so unnerving. In a building filled with slammed doors, laughter, broken marriages, and the scent of burnt food, 3D was still. Too still. You notice these things when you've been in the same place for over a decade. I used to pass it every morning, nodding at the people that never blinked. For years, I figured no one actually lived there until the incident with the package. It started on a damp Tuesday in October. I'd just come back from my night shift, balancing a soggy umbrella, a bag of groceries, and a sour mood when I spotted a box outside 3D's door. It was medium-sized, taped aggressively, no address label, just a single word scribbled in permanent marker, Arn. That alone would have been strange enough, but the smell, that acrid, coppery stench, made my stomach turn, like rust in old meat. I glanced around. The hallway was empty. I stepped closer, holding my breath, and noticed that a thick, oily stain had seeped out from one corner of the box, spreading like ink on wet paper. I didn't touch it. I don't think anyone in their right mind would. But by morning was gone. No box, no stain, not even a trace of the smell. I asked around casually at first. My neighbor with the twin poodles, the old man with the hearing aid who never left his window. But no one had seen it. Or if they had, they weren't saying. After that, I started noticing other things. Lights flickering only when I passed that door. The elevator stalling briefly every time it reached the third floor. The odd way the air seemed colder near 3D, like it had its own climate. One night, I made the mistake of pressing my ear to the door. There was no sound at first, then faintly like someone breathing through gauze. Rasping, wet, deliberate. Not the kind of breathing you'd hear from someone asleep or sick. It sounded aware, intentional. I stumbled back, heartbeat thudding in my ears. I told myself it was plumbing. The building was old, full of creaks and groans. But some part of me knew better. I started paying closer attention to who came and went. Every morning at precisely 6:03 a.m., the hallway camera showed static for exactly 12 seconds. Just that one camera, overlooking 3D. I checked the footage myself in the building office when the superintendent left his laptop open one afternoon. Static, every day. And then there was the janitor. Friendly guy, always humming old songs while sweeping the stairs. One morning, I found him standing completely still outside 3D, mop in hand, staring at the door like it owed him something. I called his name twice. No response. Only when I touched his shoulder did he flinch, blink, and return to life like a machine resetting. I asked him what he was doing, but he just mumbled something about a noise. When I pressed further, he dropped the mop and walked away without another word. He never came back to work after that. I heard he'd moved states without notice. Then came the woman. She appeared one evening just before sunset, gliding past me in the hallway without a word. Pale, with dark hair that fell like ink down her back, she wore a green dress that looked vintage, like something out of a 1950s magazine. She had no keys, yet she walked straight to 3D and disappeared inside without knocking. I stood there, stunned. She hadn't looked at me, hadn't even acknowledged my presence, but I felt something when she passed. Pressure in my chest, like the air had thickened around her. I waited for the sound of the door closing, but it never came. It was like the hallway had swallowed her whole. Over the next week, I saw her 3 more times. Always around dusk, always alone, always in that same dress. I tried once to follow her, to catch the door before it closed. But as I turned the corner, she was already gone. The hallway was empty, the door firmly shut. I even knocked once, heart pounding like a war drum, but no one answered. I listened again. Nothing. Not even the breathing. But that night, I found something slipped under my own door. A photograph, black and white, faded at the edges. It showed a man and a woman standing on a balcony, smiling stiffly at the camera. The woman wore the same green dress. On the back, written in smudged ink, "She never left." I barely slept that night. My dreams were fragmented, full of static and wet footprints and a door that wouldn't stay closed. In the morning, I checked my peephole before opening the door, something I hadn't done in years. Nothing. But taped to my doorframe was a key, old-fashioned brass, worn smooth with age. It didn't belong to any door I knew in the building. I tried it anyway, first on my apartment, then the stairwell, then the mailbox room. It fit nowhere. Finally, with shaking hands, I approached 3D. The hallway was silent, the air thick with that familiar chill. I slid the key into the lock. It turned. I hesitated. Everything in my body screamed not to open that door. My instincts, my gut, even the hairs on my arms, all warned me to turn back, but I didn't. Curiosity, fear, whatever you want to call it, pushed me forward. The door opened without a sound, and inside nothing. Or at least that's what I thought at first. No furniture. No lights, just darkness stretching further than should have been physically possible. Like the apartment didn't end where the floor plan said it should. I stepped inside. The door closed behind me on its own. I spun around, heart now in my throat, but when I reached for the handle, it was gone. Not locked, gone. Just a wall where the door had been. I stood there frozen, trying to process what was happening. And then I heard it. The breathing. Closed now. All around me. Wet, rhythmic, deliberate. I wasn't alone. I wasn't even welcome. A light flickered overhead. Not a bulb, but something organic. A pulsing glow that revealed shapes in the dark. Dozens of them. Silhouettes that twitched when the light stuttered. I backed up, only to feel something cold and soft against my neck. A hand. Not warm. Not human. It slid down my shoulder, then disappeared. I turned but saw nothing. My thoughts scrambled. Was I dreaming? Dying? Then the voice came, whispered directly into my ear, not in words but in intentions. It didn't speak a language. It spoke understanding. It told me this place wasn't an apartment. It was a gate. A wound in the building's skin. And it was hungry. I don't remember leaving. I just woke up in my own bed, soaked in sweat, the key clutched in my fist. The hallway looked normal. 3D's door was back to being a door, but it never opened again. I watched for weeks. No woman, no lights. No breathing, just silence. Until the fire. It happened on a Sunday. No one knows what started it. It consumed only one unit, 3D. The rest of the building was untouched. Firemen said it was like the flames knew where to stop. There were no victims, no injuries. Nothing inside but scorched walls and ash. And in the rubble they found something strange, a vintage green dress, untouched by the fire, folded neatly on a chair that no one remembered placing there. I wish I could tell you that the fire ended it. That whatever strange presence had occupied apartment 3D had been exorcised in the smoke and heat, erased by the flames that should have reduced everything to cinders. But fires don't cleanse things like this. They just uncover them. In the days that followed, the building smelled of wet ash and melted plastic, but beneath it, that coppery stench had returned. Faint, but unmistakable. Tenants whispered, the way people do when they want to be overheard but pretend they don't. Some said the fire had been deliberate, that someone tried to destroy something that couldn't be destroyed. Others claimed the firefighters had seen someone inside the apartment as it burned, standing in the middle of the flames without moving, without screaming, their face blank as stone. But when they kicked in the door, no one was there. Just smoke and the green dress. For a week, the hallway was cordoned off. Yellow tape across the door, plastic sheets hanging like skin in the breeze from the broken windows. But then, without explanation, the tape disappeared. The plastic was removed. The door to 3D, blackened and warped, was replaced with a new one. Fresh wood, new number plate, modern lock, no keyhole, no signs of what had happened. Management put up a notice, renovation complete, new tenant arriving soon, as if a new coat of paint could fix what had taken root there. That's when I began losing time. At first, it was little things. I'd look at the clock, blink, and 20 minutes would vanish. My phone would show calls I never made. Photos would appear in my gallery. Blurry, dark, all of them taken at strange angles as if the phone had been dropped or held upside down. One showed my own hallway, but I was standing at the far end, facing the camera, even though I was alone in my apartment when I found it. I don't remember taking it. I don't remember posing. And I certainly don't remember smiling. One morning, I woke up with dirt under my fingernails and scratches on my arms. The kind you get from crawling through tight spaces. My sheets smelled like mildew. My bathroom mirror was fogged, but I hadn't taken a shower. Written on the glass, traced with a finger, were 3 words: "You let her." I stood frozen, trying to convince myself I'd written in my sleep. But I don't write in cursive. Then, I saw him. The new tenant. Or maybe he wasn't new at all. He had that look, too clean, too normal, the kind of person you forget the moment they walk away. Middle age, glasses, nondescript clothes. But there was something off, something about the way he moved, like he was waiting for someone else to catch up. Or watching for something behind him. I tried talking to him once, asked how he liked the apartment. He just smiled, nodded, and walked away without a word. But as he passed, he dropped something, a small piece of cardstock with a pattern of concentric circles, black ink on cream paper. At the center, a dot. At the very bottom, in tiny print, "We gather what slips through." I looked up to return it, but he was already gone. The circles stayed with me. I began seeing them everywhere. Graffiti in the stairwell, patterns in the condensation on windows, even in the coffee foam at the cafe downstairs. Each time, the dot in the center seemed to grow, just slightly, like it was watching me back. I tried to research the phrase from the card, but every time I typed it, my browser crashed. My history reset. Even screenshots of the phrase came out blank. Whatever it was, it didn't want to be known. One night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing something tapping on the walls. Not pipes, not mice, but something more deliberate. It followed me from room to room, always behind the wall I was closest to. I finally snapped and knocked back, 3 quick raps. The tapping stopped. Then, from deep inside the wall, 3 knocks answered. I don't know what possessed me to do it, but I tore open the vent behind my bed. It had always been there, sealed with rusted screws. I used a screwdriver and some force. Inside was a crawl space, tight and dark, lined with dust and strands of hair that weren't mine. But further back, something glinted. I reached in, arm deep, fingers trembling. I pulled out a photograph, the same one I'd received weeks ago, only this time the woman in the green dress wasn't smiling. Her eyes were gouged out. And behind her, barely visible, was a shadow. Tall, wrong, its arms too long, its head tilted like it was listening for something. I dropped the photo and backed away. The tapping resumed immediately, louder now, urgent. That was the night the power went out across the entire building. Not just the lights. Everything. Phones, laptops, backup batteries, even watches. No hum, no flicker. Just pure, suffocating silence. Outside, the city still glowed. But inside our building, it was like we'd been cut off, swallowed whole. People opened their doors, peering out into the hallway, whispering. I joined them. We gathered in the corridor, drawn together by fear. That's when someone screamed. It came from the end of the hallway. 3D. The new tenant stood there, door open behind him, arms limp at his sides. His mouth hung open, but no sound came out. The scream had come from inside the apartment. Then, something pulled him back. Not dragged, lifted. Like a string had been tied to his chest and yanked from the ceiling. He vanished into the dark, the door slamming shut behind him. We ran, all of us, down the stairs, out into the street, barefoot, shivering, eyes wild. No one spoke. No one looked back. By morning, he was back, standing in the hallway, smiling politely, holding a cup of coffee. Same clothes, same glasses, no sign of distress. I tried to speak to him, but he only nodded and turned to unlock his door. It opened silently, no sign of damage. He stepped inside, and the door clicked shut behind him. I swear I heard the locks turn 3 times, even though there was only one. That's when I stopped sleeping. I began seeing things at the edges of my vision, shapes, flashes of movement, reflections in glass that didn't belong. One night, I looked out my window and saw my own face staring back from the building across the street. 3 stories up, in a window that should have been empty. I watched it smile. My own smile, twisted, too wide. I closed the curtains and never opened them again. The neighbors changed too. People grew quiet, withdrawn. The couple in 2A moved out overnight, leaving everything behind. Furniture, clothes, even a baby monitor still chirping static. The old woman in 4C stopped leaving her apartment altogether. She taped blackout curtains over her windows and covered her peephole with duct tape. When I asked if she was okay, she hissed. It's not a place anymore. It's a mouth. Management stopped responding to emails. The super vanished. Rent checks were still cashed, but the office remained dark. No one came to fix the broken light on the 3rd floor. No one replaced the elevator cable that snapped a week later, killing no one but still falling 13 floors with a hollow. The cooing scream. The building was unraveling, but no one left. And then came the mail. One by one, each of us received the same envelope. No stamp, no return address. Just our name handwritten, and inside a single key, identical to the one I'd found months ago. Heavy, brass, ancient, and a note, it's time. That night, every apartment door opened at once. All of us stood in our doorways, clutching the keys. The hallway was silent. No lights, just the soft creak of hinges and the sound of a single piano note played slowly, repeatedly from inside 3D. We walked as if summoned. I don't remember choosing to. My feet just moved. I passed neighbors I barely knew, their eyes glazed, their mouths slightly open. We moved as one, down the corridor, keys in hand, toward the door that had started it all. The hallway stretched. I swear it grew longer. The walls pulsed like lungs, inhaling and exhaling around us. The air turned thick and wet, like breathing through wool. And when we reached 3D, the door opened by itself. Inside was not a room. It was a place that hated shape. Walls melted into each other. The ceiling was too low and too high at once. The floor breathed, and in the center stood the woman in the green dress, her face smooth as porcelain, no eyes, no mouth, no nose. She raised one hand and pointed at us. One by one, we stepped forward. One by one, we vanished. No screams. No resistance. Just the quiet hum of acceptance. When it was my turn, I hesitated. The air shifted. Something behind her moved. The shadows peeled away from the walls like wet paper. And from within them, a voice, not spoken, but thought, whispered, "You opened the gate." I stepped forward. The door closed. And yet, here I am telling you this. But if you're hearing it, then it's already begun. Look behind you. Look carefully. The pattern is there, isn't it? The dot, the circles, the hum in the walls, the voice in your dreams. You let her in too. You think once something horrible happens, once you come face to face with a truth too big, too ancient, too impossible to name, it would end. That after the screams and whispers and shadows and disappearances, you'd find some closure. But some doors, once opened, never shut. They just keep swinging inward, wider, deeper, until you can't remember where the threshold was. Apartment 3D wasn't a room. It wasn't even a place. It was an opening. A knot in the fabric of reality that someone, or something, kept tugging loose. And I hadn't just walked through it. I'd become part of it. The days after the gathering were a blur. Time ceased being a sequence and instead folded in on itself. I'd find myself in rooms I didn't remember entering, holding objects I didn't recognize. A silver comb flecked with dried blood, a crumpled letter addressed to someone named Elvira, a broken music box that played a lullaby I knew I'd never heard but could hum perfectly. The others were different now, too. The residents who had marched silently into 3D with me, well, we came back, but not completely. Some wouldn't speak anymore. Others only spoke in fragments, muttering things like, "The mirror turned first," or "Hits the eye, not the door." A few didn't return at all, but no one in the building asked about them. It was like their names had been erased from the lease agreements, the mailboxes, even our memories. I'd find blank spaces in my mind where I was sure someone used to live. I tried to document it. To resist the forgetting, I bought notebooks, labeled them by day, jotted down everything. What I saw, what I felt, what the walls whispered when I leaned close. But each morning, the pages were blank again, not erased. Rewritten. The handwriting wasn't mine. Jagged, too neat, too consistent. The notes made no sense on their own. The glass must not see you sleep. Will gather because the gap remembers names. She dreams through mirrors, bleeds through doors. I filled 8 notebooks that way, but none of them stayed the same from night to night, like the paper was breathing, adapting. And then came the dreams. Not normal ones, not even nightmares. These were lucid, architectural, like blueprints of things that shouldn't exist. I'd dream of buildings within buildings, staircases that climbed in circles without rising, apartments that opened into train tunnels or flooded basements filled with rusted toys. Always dark, always wet, always watched, and always her, the woman in the green dress. Only now her face was different, not missing, but shifting, fluid. One night she looked like my mother, the next like my old music teacher. Then, like me, I'd wake up gasping, sweating, only to find water pooled around my bed, muddy footprints on the floor, or my windows wide open despite the locked latches. I tried to leave. I really did. I packed a bag one morning, left my keys on the counter, walked straight out the front door, didn't look back, didn't even take the elevator. I made it 6 blocks before the world blinked. That's the only way I can describe it. Like someone flipped the channel in my head. One moment, I was outside, feeling the warmth of the sun on my face. The next, I was standing in the building lobby again, bag gone, keys back in my pocket, the doorman nodding as if I'd never left. When I looked outside, the street was different. Gray washed out, cars parked in odd angles like pieces of a broken puzzle. It wasn't the real world anymore. It was an imitation, and I had no idea how long I'd been stuck in it. After that, I stopped trying to leave. Instead, I started watching. I noticed how the walls pulsed slightly at dawn, how the pipes carried whispers when no water flowed, how the elevator skipped the 3rd floor unless summoned from within. I traced the patterns in the wallpaper, realized they weren't decorative but directional. Spirals? Keys. I began mapping them, drawing charts, connecting lines. The center was always 3D. But the more I learned, the more I forgot. I'd write things down and they'd vanish. I'd record messages to myself and find the audio scrambled, replaced with static or that same humming piano note. I caught glimpses of myself in mirrors, delayed by a fraction of a second, always blinking after I did, always a beat behind. My reflection began smiling on its own. I covered the mirrors. It didn't help. The smiles found other ways in. Reflections in puddles, spoons, the black screen of my phone. Then, one night, I found the spiral door. It wasn't there before. I'm sure of it. It appeared on the back wall of the laundry room, behind a row of useless dryers. A spiral etched into the concrete, as if carved by fingernails endlessly curling inward. The moment I saw it, I felt it calling. Not in words, but in sensation. A tug behind my ribcage. A hunger I couldn't name. I stepped forward, placed my hand on the center, and the wall melted. Inside was a corridor, long and narrow, lit by flickering bulbs that hung from wires like nooses. The walls were lined with photographs. Hundreds of them, all black and white, all showing people in the building. Not just current tenants, but people from decades ago, some in old-time clothes, some holding suitcases, babies, or cats. Each face frozen mid-expression, laughing, screaming, crying. And in every photo, in the background somewhere, barely visible, was the woman in green. Always there, always watching. I walked for what felt like hours. The air grew colder, heavier. My breath fogged in front of me. I began hearing footsteps behind me, perfectly matching mine. I stopped, they stopped. I ran, they ran faster. But when I turned around, there was nothing. Just the photos. Watching. At the end of the corridor was a door. Old. Wooden. No handle. Just a single peephole. I looked through it. On the other side was my apartment. Not like it used to be. Like it would be. Future tense. The furniture was old or worn. The walls stained with mold. There was a crib in the corner, empty, rocking. I saw myself sitting on the couch, back arched unnaturally, face stretched in a silent scream. The woman stood behind me, hand on my shoulder, whispering into my ear. My reflection on the TV screen was smiling. I pulled back, heart hammering. And the door opened. I didn't want to go through. I swear I didn't. But my legs moved without asking. I stepped into my future apartment, smelled the rot, heard the lullaby playing from the empty crib. The version of me on the couch didn't move. Didn't acknowledge me. I walked past him, past myself, and into the kitchen. A letter sat on the counter, sealed with wax. My name written on it. Inside, a single sentence, "You were the first crack." I didn't understand then. I'm not sure I do now, but something shifted in that moment. I felt the building sigh like it had been waiting for me to reach this point. The walls rippled. The lights dimmed, and from every direction came the same sound or knocking. Dozens of fists pounding on doors, windows, walls from inside the building, from within the floors, from under the sinks. People screaming to be let out, or let in. I ran. I stumbled back into the hallway, the photos now distorted, faces melting, mouths stretched too wide. I sprinted through the spiral door, which snapped shut behind me with a wet thud. Back in the laundry room, I collapsed against the wall, shaking. The spiral was gone. The dryers were humming again. A sock tumbled past the window like nothing had happened, but I'd brought something back with me. At first, it was just a hum in the walls. Then voices in the water. The air changed. People began leaving notes under each other's doors. Pleas for help, drawings of the spiral, desperate apologies written in shaky ink. One by one, they disappeared. The building grew quieter. I stopped seeing neighbors. Mail piled up. Deliveries were left untouched. I passed apartments that used to be warm and bright, now dark and silent. And then I got the second letter. This one was burned around the edges. The handwriting was different, scratched, angry. It said, "You've been feeding her. Every time you looked, every time you remembered, you gave her shape." That's when I knew I'd made it worse. Whatever lived behind apartment 3D had been forgotten for a reason. Dormant. Disconnected. But I remembered it. I mapped it. I spoke of it. I opened the door. And in doing so, I taught it how to stay. Now, it doesn't need the room anymore. She moves between apartments, between mirrors, between dreams. Sometimes I see her reflected in my kettle, even though it's empty. Sometimes I hear her humming the lullaby through the air vents, even though the baby monitor in 2A has long gone silent. I tried to stop it, tried to unremember her. But forgetting isn't a weapon. It's a door. And once you remember that door, you've already stepped through. I tried warning others. Online, in forums, anonymous boards. But the posts vanish. Replies turn into circles. Sometimes I get messages back that say only, "We gather what slips through." I don't know who they are, or if they're still human. Maybe they're like me. Maybe I'm not even me anymore. There's one last notebook, the only one that doesn't erase itself. I hide it in the ceiling, above a loose tile. It's for whoever comes next. Because someone will. The building always finds more. It needs tenants, stories, memories. That's how she grows. That's how the apartment breathes. You always think you'll notice the moment you stop being yourself, that there will be a sharp rupture, a scream in the void, something to mark the divide between before and after. But the truth is far more subtle. It creeps. It shifts. It replaces pieces of you so slowly that by the time you realize you're hollow, it's too late to remember what filled you. I used to be someone. A person with a past, with routines, with preferences. I had favorite foods, songs I played when I cleaned the kitchen, books I reread every winter. Now I don't remember what I like. I don't remember what my voice used to sound like when it wasn't speaking for her. Because that's what's happening now. She speaks through me. At first, it was dreams. Then, whispers under my tongue that I thought were thoughts. Then my fingers started typing words I didn't understand, drawing diagrams I couldn't interpret. Spirals. Always spirals. And faces. Dozens of them. Some familiar, some not. Some I hadn't seen yet. But I would. She showed me that much. Apartment 3D is no longer just an origin point. It's a vector. A seed. What we thought was the infection was only the bloom. The moment of flowering. The true root system runs beneath the floorboards, beneath the plumbing, beneath the seams of time and space stitched loosely into this structure. The building isn't haunted, it's cultivated. And we, tenants, visitors, delivery men, pets, we are the soil. The new maintenance man showed up last week. That's how I know it's starting again. He's too clean. He wears a uniform with no name tag. Smiles with teeth that are almost perfect, but a little too many. His eyes are brown unless you look too long. Then they're gray, or maybe no color at all. He carries a key ring with hundreds of keys. None of them are labeled. None of them jingle. He never asks questions, just nods and fixes things that weren't broken before he touched them. I passed him in the stairwell once and felt my chest tighten, like I'd inhaled something wrong. My ears rang. My vision tunneled. He looked at me and said, in a voice like a recording, "You're holding too much. Let go." I didn't respond. I couldn't. I just backed away. But later that night, I found one of his keys on my pillow. Not brass this time. Bone. Warm to the touch. I didn't sleep. The residents have started rearranging their furniture, pushing it all to the sides of their rooms, leaving only empty space in the middle. Circles. Some paint them. Others carve them. I watched through the peephole as Mrs. Geller from 5A dragged her entire dining set into the hallway, barefoot and sobbing, only to kneel in the center of a chalk circle and hum a single note until her throat gave out. Her apartment's been dark since. And me, I'm losing track of hours. I find myself outside doors I shouldn't be near. I wake up standing in elevators stuck between floors. I dream in languages that make my teeth hurt. My handwriting no longer matches any old documents I've kept. My reflection still smiles after I frown. It's gotten bold now, mimicking movements it never used to. Yesterday, it winked. I didn't. The woman in the green dress isn't appearing as often. But I feel her more now, like she's within me, not possessing, occupying. There's a difference. Possession is intrusive. Occupation is patient. Strategic, like a tenant who moved in while the landlord was away. She's in my joints, my jaw, my sleep. And sometimes, when I see my silhouette in passing, I swear it's wearing that dress. I decided to descend into the basement again. I hadn't been down there in weeks. Not since the spiral door. But something told me it had changed. The stairs creaked less than they used to. The air smelled like salt, like seaweed and rotting wood. And the darkness wasn't empty. It was layered, thick, peeling, like paint over something trying to emerge. The laundry machines were gone. Just gone. Replaced by a massive mirror floor to ceiling, rimmed with brass bolts that wept a slow black ooze. My reflection wasn't mine. Not anymore. It stood differently, taller, shoulders back, head slightly cocked like it was listening to a frequency I couldn't hear. Always smiling. Behind it, a door appeared. Not in the mirror, behind the reflection, which meant it wasn't behind me at all. But when I turned around, it was there. Flesh-colored wood, veins beneath the surface pulsing faintly. No handle, just a padlock shaped like an eye. It blinked when I reached for it. Then it opened on its own. Inside was a hallway I'd never seen. It felt wrong immediately. The geometry, the proportions, the angles, nothing was square. The floor sloped in an arc. The ceiling breathed. The wallpaper writhed slightly, as if worms moved underneath. I walked because I had to, because there was no other choice. The walls whispered. Not voices this time. Memories. Mine. Ones I'd forgotten. Ones that weren't mine but sounded familiar. Ones I'd never want to remember. There were doors on either side, all closed, all labeled with dates. July 12th of 1993, November 8, 2001, March 4, 27. I stopped at the one labeled August 3, 2020. I didn't know why. My hand moved on its own. The knob was warm. The room inside was a replica of my childhood bedroom. Perfect. Down to the dinosaur lamp and the faded poster of an astronaut on the moon. Except the astronaut's helmet was cracked, and inside, instead of a face, was a swirling void filled with teeth. The bed creaked as I approached. Something moved under the blanket. I turned away, closed the door, walked faster. The last door had no date, just a name, OOU. It pulsed slightly. I reached for it, and it dissolved into mist. Behind it was a void, not black. White, blinding. I stepped in, and fell. I fell through memory, through buildings I've never seen but recognized, through apartments filled with mannequins staring at flickering TVs, through cities that blinked in and out of existence, through teeth, through spirals, through her eyes, and then I was back, in my apartment, only different. Everything was slightly off, colors too bright, angles wrong. My apartment now faced the other direction. The sun rose from the wrong window. My coffee maker poured black sludge that hissed. My phone only displayed the spiral symbol, rotating endlessly. I opened the fridge to find a staircase leading down, endlessly down, lined with framed photographs of me sleeping, taken from above. And then I got a call. Not from a number, from the building itself. The walls vibrated. The ringtone was the lullaby I picked up. She didn't speak, but I understood. It's happening again. A new tenant moved in across from 3D. A young woman. Kind eyes. Wears headphones. Smiles politely. I tried to warn her. Left notes. Slipped messages under her door. But one came back folded into a perfect triangle. On it, written in precise block letters, "It's not apartment 3D anymore. It's 3 now." I checked the door. She was right. The brass plate had changed. Subtle, immaculate, but undeniably different. The infection has moved. Or maybe it's multiplying. I don't know how much longer I can hold on to myself. I'm starting to repeat actions without memory. I cut my fingernails 3 times today and they're still long. I threw out a red shirt and found 3 more hanging in the closet. My reflection no longer mimics me. It watches, waits, mouths words I haven't said yet. And worst of all, I think I'm starting to like it. The warmth. The unity. The feeling that I'm not alone anymore. That I'm part of something old and vast and endlessly patient. Something that doesn't want to hurt me. It just wants to be seen, to be remembered, to wear me like a suit and walk the world again. The tenants are gathering again. I hear them in the hall at night. Not moving. Just humming. The same note, the lullaby. I hum it too now, without noticing. Sometimes I wake up mid-hum, tears on my face, hands pressed to the walls as if I'm listening for something beneath the paint. We're not a building anymore. We're a body. And she is the breath. The key is in your pocket now, isn't it? Go ahead. Check. It's already begun. Do you remember the feeling of knowing something is wrong before your mind can explain why? That crawling tension along your spine when nothing looks out of place. But everything feels shifted, like walking into your home and sensing the furniture moved a quarter inch, just enough to disturb your balance. That's how it started for me in what should have been my last normal week in the building. Except by then, I understood there was no such thing as normal anymore, not within these walls, not after apartment 3D, or whatever it had become now. Changed numbers, tenants changed me. They say numbers are just labels. Doors are just wood, but the building didn't agree. Numbers meant something here. They weren't designations, they were stages, transformations. And now the number was 3E, but the rules had twisted again. There were new tenants, yes, but not in the way you'd think. Some were people. Others were mimics, shells, copies of people that once lived here but moved differently, talked without blinking, smiled in mirrors when their real faces didn't. The infection had learned how to grow. And I was certain now, it didn't want escape, it wanted evolution. I kept a calendar by my door. I marked it daily, obsessively, carving tiny slashes with a penknife. But after a while, I noticed days repeating. I'd carve a mark on what should have been a Wednesday only to find Thursday's mark already etched. And sometimes the dates moved backward, or vanished. One morning, I woke up and the calendar showed a month I'd never heard of Earth. 31 days, each marked full. No moon cycle. Just full. I stopped trusting time. I stopped trusting daylight. The sun would rise too fast, set too slow. Sometimes it would arc twice in one day. One afternoon, the shadows on my floor reversed direction mid-step, crawling toward the walls instead of away from them. I didn't sleep anymore. Couldn't. Not really. Sleep turned into episodes. Brief, involuntary disconnections. I'd blink and find myself holding things I didn't own. A doll with no face. A mirror with no reflection. A crumpled drawing of a tree with veins instead of bark. None of it made sense, but I couldn't throw them away. Every time I tried, they'd reappear on my pillow. Then came the echo rooms. It started in 40C above me. One night I heard footsteps, heavy, repetitive, like someone pacing in a loop. Then whispers. Then the unmistakable sound of furniture being dragged. Except 40C had been empty for months. No lights, no water usage. I checked the mail slot. Nothing but dust. So I went up. Knocked. No answer. I pressed my ear to the door and nearly collapsed. It was my voice I heard inside, talking, pleading, describing something I hadn't done yet. Don't go into the third mirror, I heard myself say. She waits behind the glass now. I stumbled back, heart hammering. That night, I took every mirror in my apartment and turned them to face the walls. It didn't work. The reflections found a way. On the back of my microwave, in puddles near the sink, in the screen of my dead laptop. Sometimes they didn't reflect what was in the room at all. Sometimes they showed people watching me from rooms I didn't recognize, or places I hadn't been to yet. And always her. Never directly. Just peripheral. Just a flash of green silk. The hem of the dress vanishing around a corner. A reflection of hair sliding behind a doorway as I turned. I stopped saying her name even in my mind. It gave her strength. That much I learned. The more I thought of her, the more control she took. And yet, not thinking was impossible. She was in everything now. In the whispers through the pipes. In the static on the radio. In the way the walls began pulsing to a heartbeat not my own. The elevator changed too. It used to avoid the third floor. Now it stopped there on its own. I'd get in, press the lobby, and it would descend one floor. Then stop. The doors would creak open to a hallway I didn't recognize. It wasn't my third floor. The walls were wet. The lights buzzed like dying insects. The carpet oozed something thick and dark, and always, at the far end, stood a door, always slightly ajar, always humming, not music, breathing. I never stepped out, not then. I wanted to. I almost did, but each time, I'd see movement. A shadow darting just past the doorframe. A figure crawling backward along the ceiling. Once, I saw someone dragging themselves down the hall with no legs, their mouth stitched shut, sobbing through their eyes. I punched the closed doors button until my knuckles split. The elevator would always take me back up, eventually, but I knew it was only a matter of time before it didn't. The building wanted me deeper, further, down and in and through. Then came the call. I destroyed my phone weeks earlier, smashed it to bits and threw the pieces in the trash chute on separate days, but somehow the landline rang. I hadn't plugged it in, didn't even have a connection, but it rang. I picked it up, hand trembling. There was no voice, just silence, then static. Then my voice warped, distant, underwater. She's opening the lower floors. Don't follow the wet footprints. Don't click. I looked down. The carpet was damp. Footprints led from the door to the kitchen. Small, barefoot, dripping. I was alone. I followed them anyway. Because of course I did. They led to the fridge. It opened on its own. Inside, past the cold shelves, was a tunnel. This time I didn't hesitate. I crawled through. The tunnel sloped down. The air thickened. The smell of brine and rust filled my nose. The walls were lined with hair. Long, dark strands pressed flat like wallpaper. I don't know how long I crawled. Time folded in that space. I lost feeling in my knees. My fingertips blood. Then I emerged into the atrium. It was massive, cathedralesque. The ceiling arched impossibly high, vanishing into a fog of darkness. Pillars held up nothing. The floor was bone. Hundreds of interlocked skeletons. And in the center, a fountain. Black liquid bubbled up from a mouthless face at the base. Around the edges stood mirrors, each showing a different room from the building. Some reflected memories, some reflected futures, some reflected nothing at all, and one showed me now. Watching myself, watching her behind me, I turned. She was there, no longer hiding. She didn't move, didn't speak, just was. A presence so complete that my brain struggled to hold her shape. She was a woman, yes, but also a room, a wound, a dress full of silence. Her face flickered through identities. My mother, my reflection, my first crush, my fear, my future. All in green, all smiling. She stepped forward. I stepped back. But there was nowhere left to run. Behind me, the mirrors began to hum, then vibrate, then crack. One by one they shattered, releasing shadows that crawled up the walls, screamed through the ceilings, slithered into the fountain. The black liquid surged, spraying into the air. It hissed where it touched me, burning through skin and thought. She reached for me, touched my chest. Whispers flooded my head, a flood of knowledge, of memory, of impossible things, and I understood. The building isn't haunted. The building is her. Each room, a rib. Each hallway, a vein. Each mirror, an eye. And I had lived inside her, slept in her breath, fed her with my thoughts. I dropped to my knees, sobbing. She leaned down, placed her forehead to mine, and said, In every voice I've ever loved or feared, no, you carry me. When I woke, I was in my bed. The fridge was closed. The tunnel was gone. But I knew. It was inside me now. I saw things, patterns behind reality. The people in the building weren't people. They were seeds. Some bloomed, some rotted, some whispered and waited. I was no longer resisting. I was growing. And soon, very soon, I'd open too. There's a peculiar stillness that comes when you finally stop fighting. Not peace. Not acceptance. Something closer to surrender, but deeper. Like your bones have made a pact with gravity, and your mind has stopped arguing with the dark. That's where I live now. Not in the apartment I used to call home, not even in this building. I live in that in-between, that hush that comes just before a door you didn't mean to open swings wide and reveals not a room, but a truth so large it has to hide in the seams of reality. The others don't speak anymore. Not in the way humans speak. I walk the halls and pass faces I used to recognize. Mr. Lorenz with the crossword puzzles, Alma from 2B who always smelled like lavender and regret. They look the same mostly. But their eyes are too still. Their lips twitch in unison sometimes, like they're tasting the same thought. The hallway lights flicker to a rhythm I no longer try to time. I know better now. The building breathes in cycles. It sleeps and wakes, remembers and forgets. And every time it forgets something, I remember more. Because that's what I am now, the carrier, the vessel, the archive. She chose me. Or maybe I was always meant to be chosen. Maybe every sleepless night, every spiral drawn in the margin of a forgotten notebook, every shiver down my spine when I passed 3D, it was all her reaching through, tapping gently, reminding me that the story wasn't done with me yet. Do you know how a building dies? Not with fire. Not with rot. Not even with vacancy. A building dies when no one forgets it. When its shape, its hallways, its name is repeated so often it becomes fixed in memory, immovable, frozen in place. That's why she needed me. That's why she made me remember everything, because this place isn't supposed to stay. It's supposed to shift, to move through time, space, stories, to slip through cracks and find new homes, new hosts. But memory roots it, and I became the anchor. So she started cutting pieces off of me, not physically. You wouldn't see it if you looked. But I feel it, whole memories excised. I can't recall my own last name anymore, or what my parents looked like, or what sunlight really feels like. I remember facts about those things, like I read them in a book, but the feelings are gone, drained, like a photo that's faded just enough to make everyone look like strangers. She took them, and in return, filled me with her memories. Images of places that don't exist, languages no tongue can pronounce, rooms with walls that bleed when you knock, mirrors that eat light, doors that laugh when they lock behind you. One of those doors is now in my apartment, where the closet used to be. It arrived quietly, overnight. No sound, no creaking. Just there, made of black glass with a faint pulse like a heartbeat behind it. I've never opened it, I don't need to. I know it's behind a room, not a copy. Waiting, of meeting, watching, smiling. Sometimes I catch glimpses through the sliver between the frame and the floor. Bare feet. Address him. A whisper of movement when no one's walking. She's in there. Or maybe I'm in there. And this is the copy. It doesn't matter. The door doesn't open yet. But it will. The building has started to change its shape during the day now. Subtle at first. A hallway longer than it should be. A window where there wasn't one. But now entire rooms move. Tenants wake up in apartments that aren't theirs. The staircase loops if you walk it too fast. And the elevator is gone. Just a shaft now, open and waiting. I dropped a flashlight down once. It never hit bottom. But 20 minutes later, it rolled out from under my bed. The calendar says it's Monday. Again, the same Monday I've had 17 times now. Each one slightly different. The pigeons on the roof facing the wrong direction. The building across the street bearing a different name. My own handwriting on the grocery list looking like it was written by a child. But it's always the same Monday. I think that's how she keeps me here. Loops me, rewrites the scene until I forget I'm in a performance. But I haven't forgotten, that's the problem. I still remember who I was, what I was, and worst of all, I remember the key. It's still here, heavy, brass, warm. Even now, I don't carry it anymore, but it always returns, in coat pockets I haven't worn, in cereal boxes. Once, inside the pages of a book I'd never opened before. A book that didn't exist on my shelf the day prior. The title was blank, but inside was only one sentence repeated across all the pages. You opened the gate. She never tells me directly what she wants, but I know it has to do with spreading. This building, it's not just a building, it's a prototype, a seed pod, a mobile organ. And now that it's taken root here, it's ready to release, to move to find new hosts, new apartments, new cities. That's why the echoes have started leaking through the plumbing. That's why the neighbors hear whispers from their drains. That's why the TV, even unplugged, now sometimes shows people walking past doorways that don't exist. A preview of her next destination. I've seen it, in the drawings. The maps. She makes me sketch blueprints in my sleep. New floor plans. Cities with impossible geometry. Buildings that twist around themselves like vines. At first, I burned the drawings. Now I bury them in the walls. Because I know someone will find them. The postman comes by once a week. He doesn't blink anymore. His mailbag twitches. I asked him once, "Do you know what's happening here?" He said, "I deliver what's already arrived." He handed me a box. No address. No return. I didn't open it. It's still in my kitchen. Pulsing. I think it's a heart. One morning, I woke up and the numbers on all the doors had changed. No longer 1A, 2B, 30C. Now their names. Saleon C. Afaion. VO8. Mine says, ARTK, inappropriate, I suppose. I record everything now, in notebooks, in scratch wall markings, in blood if necessary. Not to warn, there's no point in warning. She likes warnings. They make people curious. Curiosity opens doors. No, I record because one day someone will step into this building after it's moved. They'll smell the copper, see the spirals, hear the music box playing from the third vent down the hall, and maybe, just maybe, they'll understand what they've stepped into before it's too late. Or maybe they'll open the door anyway. Because we always do. We always open the door. I hear the others singing again. Not words. Just a low hum, rising and falling like the buildings breathing through them. They hum through the walls, in harmony, like a choir that's never needed to practice because they've sung this song 1,000 years before. I hum with them now. I didn't choose to. It just came out of me one day like air. The hallway outside is flooded again. Not with water. With memories, they rise up and ripple. Childhood birthdays, hospital rooms, the first time I saw her reflection before I knew her name. I walk barefoot through them now, let them soak in. Because the more I carry, the more she fills in the gaps. And I can feel it, the final shift. She's preparing to move. The building has grown restless. The rooms flicker. Some now lead outside, others lead to each other. Some open to nothing. You could step through a closet in 40E and find yourself behind the mirror and see. The rules have collapsed. The spiral is complete. The last tenant has arrived. He came yesterday. A man in a gray hoodie, dragging a suitcase with stickers from cities that no longer exist. He smiled at me, and I recognized his eyes. They were mine, but younger, touched, curious. I tried to speak, to warn, but the door to 30 opened before I could. And she was standing there, dressed in green, smiling. She held out her hand, and the man took it. Then the door closed, and I knew what came next. The final act, the performance loop, the memory rewrite. He will become the new archive. He will carry her story. He will start again. And I will fade, not vanish, just dissolve. Into walls, into whispers, into the hum of the radiator at 3 a.m. And one day, someone will knock on their own apartment door and hear me knock back. Because this isn't a story, it's a cycle. And now, you know it too. The spiral has reached you. Go ahead, look behind you. Do you see it? The door. Good. Now all that's left is to open it. Enjoyed the video? Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell so you never miss an update.